people may think that being a CEO is really fun and glamorous and things like that, but most CEOs have a shelf life, because of the stress. But T, I feel great after 20 years. I feel like I can go another 30. All right, headed over to the office for the regular Monday meeting. This is where all the leaders are there, and I just want to mention, like, a lot of this stuff that is on social media. It's our real life, but you typically just see the highlights of what's going on. So this one might be like a typical day that I run into. It's not exactly going to be like that exciting. It's just like the day-to-day grind of crap. So like right now, I'm trying to plan financially for the rest of the year. So payroll, it averages somewhere around 6 million a month. Payroll's like 6 million a month. So without having any investors or no private equity, what's a little bit stressful is that I have to make sure that I can meet 6 million a month minimum in payroll, and without any investors. So somehow we've successfully done that over, we're going on our 20th year in November. This November, we started our 20th year, and somehow we've been able to do this, but it doesn't go without stress, T. So for example, I couldn't receive a payment until July of 2022. So now I know what we're dealing with here. So I can what I've been able to do is not receive a payment until a whole year as a result of just making sure that I move assets around in a way that the company comes first. You can never mess with people's pay. Don't ever with people's pay. And that's the quickest way that you can get people to resign. What I'll do now that I can plan for it. Last year was scary. This year I can plan for it as a result of knowing that I'll go a whole year and I'll keep investing in the company and just putting every bit of profit back into it. And now I'm prepared. So the anxiety really isn't going to be there as much this year. But last year was crazy. So really, going all these years, I've learned that it's really not any different than it was, 18 years ago. It's no different. It's just that the magnitude is greater. So it kind of increases the stress a little bit. So in other words, a couple wrong moves can throw off the trajectory of the company, and then all of a sudden our cash flow could be poor. So you can have a strong balance sheet as an organization, but be cash poor. And that's often what happens to us.
So this is our latest cash basis point. It was just short of $1 million. It came at $973,000. It was like double what we collected last year. So we're still in a really, really good trend. Looks like it dipped a lot, but those last two periods were really incredible. They were like over 5 million. So
I don't think one of the things we're doing is taking all the utilities and of, say, a building like the Arsenal and then the one up in Maine. I hate that I had to do the research first to present it to him, but there looks like to me like we can save some money where we rapidly depreciate things on assets more rapidly than that 28-year type, depreciation. We can more rapidly write off or depreciate some assets by separating out a whole bunch of utilities and things like that. I'll give you the actual code for it. I gotta find it. We have real estate holdings, so we can borrow against real estate. We have our own receivables that we can borrow against, and assets that are spread out across the country. That way, you're not, if you have a problem with one bank or one asset, you don't go under. So by doing that, it's important. This morning I was on the phone with Salji and Papa, our accountant, and what I learned was that we have to start taking a close look at a tax code. It's called 179 tax code. And with the 179 tax code, it's pretty interesting because we can look at each building and identify how quickly we can depreciate assets, all within legal limits. So that way those expenses do hit the balance sheet. Instead of depreciating things over time, we can take certain assets and they can count as expenses, which sounds contradictory to what any business owner would want to do. But by increasing those expenses, yes, we have very little cash flow and we're living on a 2 week margin. However, if we have to have the cushion, we can borrow against those assets. So we're in the process of, with the school year starting in a few weeks and some policy changes and so forth, we're in the process of me actually revising every single employee contract. You know, a lot of times people think that should be done by human resources or by an attorney. We have the attorney review every single clinical employee's contract. However, at the end, I have to take a look at it, because if something goes wrong, you know, it's all 100% my fault.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, another thing is we're going to have to look at our approach again, our approach to recruitment and retention, because things in the BCBA landscape, so board certified behavior analysts, it's a whole different ball game coming out of the pandemic now. So there's still not enough BCBAs, and as a result, you know, they deserve extremely high pay, great benefits, to be treated with dignity, just like every employee. You know, it's just that there's a shortage like crazy right now. So one of the things that I'm going to need to do is make sure that we can figure out, I mean, I don't even know how they do it, but there's companies out there that are giving $10,000 sign-on bonuses to BCBAs. We can't afford that, as you know, because we parlay every dollar back into the organization for growth. So I don't know how these companies are doing $10,000 sign-on bonuses, but I can tell you one thing. Many of those companies that are doing it, they're only around for about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And what happens is, you know, it's a business for them. And, you know, every once in a while, you'll see some of these businesses really thrive, but I often see a shelf life for the organizations that sometimes they stretch themselves and they land BCBAs with $10,000 sign-on bonuses, but then it's not sustainable, because a lot of those BCBAs, we welcome them back with open arms.
And then it was the possible rehire, turned down the offer due to it not being enough money. She said something about salary, but it's just.
Was that what she was making last time?
She was making, was it 30 and 28.50? I think grade 1 was 30, grade 2 was 28.50.
So we offered her less than that?
We offered her, what was the initial offer? 28.50.
But she was making 28.50 and 30 when she left?
Yeah, but then I go back. You offered her 27, and then we bumped you up to the 28.50.
Why do we offer her less money than what she got?
I just asked her what she was making, because we don't pay that much for that.
Yeah, the initial offer
Doesn't have
that went out
her
was
back,
27.
I mean, she's only left us someone to.
I don't think you were aware she was a rehire either when this first one out.
I'm looking at it from the perspective of, we have an employee who left that we're looking to welcome back,
Right.
but we're going to welcome them back at less money. That's kind of like a smack in the face.
Yeah.
So like that doesn't.
But back then we were paying more, you
I
know? So, I mean, now we're not paying the same.
I mean, but if it was 28.50 and 30, we still pay people those rates. So I would have brought her in at.
Because we know she has experience.
I mean, I can offer her the 30. I think she wants more than that.
Yeah, she just reached, well, I have marked that she wants 30.
Yeah, let's offer 30, because we can justify that based on she's got experience with us, right?
I think you say,
Yeah.
hey, listen,
It's been gone
unfortunately.
a while, that was still gonna have to be like a little onboarding or.
I think you just say, hey, listen, we actually looked at our systems incorrectly, and that seems like what you were making before, so we're happy to bring you back at that rate.
Yeah.
And just do it that way, because that's the truth. We just,
Yeah, she just reached out today, it looked like, so.
Yeah.
and then let her know, it's probably good for a phone call, if you could do that,
Yeah.
Chris. And then, in the phone call, to say, and then obviously, if you're ever looking for more, please hop on a scorecard, and you'll be able to access additional.
People may think that being a CEO is really fun and glamorous and things like that, but most CEOs have a shelf life, because of the stress. But I feel great after 20 years. I feel like I can go another 30. What I do on Monday is I mentally prepare to be pretty much barraged and inundated with problems. Some of them are legal, a lot of them are employment matters, some of them could be tax matters, some of it could be turnover, some of it could be just the cash flow in itself. These things are all performance things that a company would be judged upon, whether or not they can be sustainable.
How often do you think that these meetings help prevent something drastic from happening, like someone resigning who's not happy, or like leadership or anything like that? Like, how often do you feel like these are so important to prevent things like that?
I'll tell you, it's a good question. Every single week we catch things, every single week. So the great thing about it is that, as you'll see today, there'll be data on every single key performance indicator that we're measuring. Because, just like Paulie and I put in our book, if you're required to measure something, you can move it. So basically today, with the question that you asked about how often do you need to be on top of these things and how beneficial it can be to be ahead of it is, today we might look at what we might call a clinician a flight risk, and a flight risk could be anything from they haven't been in communication with us for a while, they may have done one of those weekly surveys and had concerns and we couldn't reach them. So there are a lot of different factors. We almost look at it like a science, that this is something that could create turnover. So let's get ahead of it. Let's make sure that the employee's happy and that they have purpose. One of the other things we started doing is, we'd have a small group that would go over personnel matters, like how do we reward those folks that are highly engaged, and then how do we make sure we're handling all within employment law any kind of challenges with an employee's performance. So we were having this larger group kind of weigh in on different things about an employee matter, but we realized that it requires a lot more than just being at the table. So now every Tuesday, Lisa Riley and I, the head of HR, we meet every single Tuesday, and what we do is go over the length of time the employee's been here, the kind of feedback we're receiving from the stakeholders, and anything in writing that may have led up to a certain incident. So we realized how important that is when it comes to making sure we make the right decision, especially if it ends up being some kind of disciplinary matter. So that's something that every Tuesday we religiously have this meeting, and a lot of it starts from this meeting here. So we end up finding a problem, and we end up digging into it the next day. So what Lisa will do, she'll make sure that nothing's whispered down the lane. We never want hearsay. So Lisa will bring up the problem today, and then tomorrow Lisa will have done all the due diligence by speaking with employees, interviewing them, gathering data, looking at their personnel file and things like that. And then that makes me feel comfortable that we did everything we could, especially if it becomes a performance problem. And that's where we, as an organization, we have a lot of compassion for folks that could be having performance problems, because I actually see that it all comes back on me. So either I didn't set up the right training conditions, or maybe the right directions, or maybe they didn't have the right support and coaching. So what does make me feel comfortable in the end is if we have all the information in front of us and we can rule out whether it's a training issue or a motivation issue, or sometimes we call it will versus skill. So when it's a problem over will, it's typically somehow there isn't the right reward system for the employee to do what they need to do. When it's an issue on skill, that's where maybe we didn't provide the right training. But I really do see human behavior and performance as something that's, for the largest part, affected by those things. And one of the things that I never want to give up on an employee if it's a skill issue. Now if it's a will issue, sometimes there's too many variables that are out of control. So the employee could go home and have a lot of challenges there that impact their job, when they get to the school. But that's something that we try to work through as well.